Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Well, today it is September 11th, so of course we will be talking about that memorial and also that day and its significance in a few minutes. But first, we begin with Irma. It has been downgraded to a tropical storm, but it is still packing a huge punch as it makes its way north, causing massive flooding along the way, impacting several states. Marcy Gonzalez live in Tampa with more.
It's a major sigh of relief today for so many people that this storm didn't cause the catastrophic damage that was expected in some places like this. But Irma is still leaving its mark.
Today, flooding in Charleston, Savannah, and breaking records in Jacksonville. What was Hurricane Irma now moving north. While Floridians statewide start to assess the destruction left by this giant storm.
We got a lot of damage, a lot of cleanup.
Neighborhoods like this one in Naples underwater. Mobile homes, airplanes, even the front of this senior living center torn apart.
It's unbelievable.
Trees uprooted, this one in Bradenton taking part of a house with it.
It's just an incredible sight.
The first images from the Keys, where Irma made its initial U.S. landfall as a Category 4 yesterday morning, now coming in, showing houses barely standing, cars buried beneath sand. With bridges closed, residents who evacuated are now trying unsuccessfully to get back.
Very anxious, and we all just want to go home and see what's going on.
Irma's second Florida landfall on Marco Island.
Look at this, total whiteout now.
Leaving damage and gratitude.
We were getting predictions that we're going to have 10 to 15 feet of storm surge, and we're grateful that we were spared.
A sentiment shared by so many in the Sunshine State.
It was not as bad as I thought it was really going to be.
Even while Florida's largest power company, FPL, says as many as 9 million people at one point today still had no electricity.
No power, no internet. I mean, we're living like savages.
Yeah, trying to have a sense of humor with crews from as far away as California here, working to get the lights back on for everyone. But people are being warned it could take weeks. Live in Tampa, Florida, Marcy Gonzalez, ABC News. Now back to you.
Thank you, Marcy. And before it even hit Florida, Hurricane Irma devastated many Caribbean islands. At least 36 people have already been announced as killed. St. Martin, Barbuda, Turks Caicos, all hammered and suffering extensive damage. Irma, it hit the north shore of Cuba as a Category 5 storm, causing severe flooding in Havana and toppling some buildings. 7 people, they've died just in that capital city alone. And the storm's so huge and it hit so many areas. Hundreds of first responders, including from our neck of the woods in New York and New Jersey, they're helping with search and rescue operations. Trucks and helicopters also they're on their way to Florida and the Caribbean. In addition, hundreds of utility workers are heading to Florida to help restore power to the millions, estimated as many as 9 million people who are now in the dark. Well, 5 1 meteorologist Joe Rayo is joining us now with more. And Joe, just the sheer scope and size of this storm, as we said in the example in the run-up, the size of Texas at some point here. We've seen storms, but the size and the magnitude of this and such a broad reach. I mean, even Indiana was getting some of the outer edges of this thing. It was amazing.
Up here in our area, people, if you look carefully enough at the sky today, you saw a bright sun, blue sky, but lots of lacy, high, thin clouds. That was from Irma. That's the outer periphery, the northernmost periphery of Irma, the blow-off of the high clouds coming all the way north into our area. Now, no problem for us,
right?
Just a few high clouds, but still, it's amazing how, as you just mentioned, how large this thing was or is.
And to that end of both what it was and what it still is now, the track of it, you know, actually people really had this thing pegged right all the way through Cuba, and then it took a little bit more of a left turn, and instead of impacting Miami as much, all of a sudden the western portion of Florida and then all the way up through Jacksonville and now even portions of Georgia here and South Carolina are getting hammered. There was a late turn in this thing, wasn't there?
Right, and we did not expect, for example, the storm to interact with northern Cuba as much as it did. Now here's Irma. We have a view of it on the screen. We're going to move it northbound, and you can see it as it goes north, and it's still, by the way, causing problems in parts of Georgia and South Carolina. There are tornado watches as of this hour up till 10 10 o'clock tonight. That's the last thing. I guess you could call that Irma's parting shot, maybe spinning off a few funnel clouds or tornadoes. But now that Irma begins to fade out, the attention begins to turn to Jose. Now, Jose is located to the north of the Leeward Islands. He is a Category 2 hurricane, about 100, 105 mile per hour sustained winds. The problem for Jose is he's encountering some wind shear right now, and that is kind of preventing the storm from strengthening. In fact, if anything, it may actually be weakening in the next few hours. Now, here is the futurecast. I want to show you what Jose is anticipated to do. It's expected to whirl round and round, and then look at this. It's expected to go to the south. It's going to make a big loop to the north of the Leeward Islands. And so if you're worried about Jose or its influence on the Atlantic seaboard this week, don't worry. However, next week, after it completes that loop, it may begin to turn back to the north, and there is the possibility that perhaps the Atlantic seaboard may have to be concerned about Jose's future track. But that's days and days and days from now. And, you know, computer forecasts, people have asked me, you know, what about Jose? What's going to happen with Jose? And I tell them, I said, after about 4 or 5 days, these models just go every which way. So don't be concerned now, but next week we may have to watch.
As we look ahead, but still, as we look to where we are and what we've seen, there were records and the kind you don't want to set in terms of both wind speeds and also flooding in places, Jacksonville among them here, that have never seen the flooding like this, even since they've been keeping records going back to the mid-1800s. Right,
but you see, it was all a matter with Irma, for example. She was living, what I said to Joe Chiaffi, one of my cohorts here at the Weather Center, I said, she's living a charmed life. Literally, she is threading the needle. Had she gone over Hispaniola, for example, or had she interacted more with Cuba, she would have been knocked down in terms of wind, and some of that moisture would have been wrung out before she had a chance to get into Florida. It's just a matter of the track more than anything else. Hurricanes are going to get very strong. They are going to gather a lot of energy and moisture. But again, it's the track that will determine eventually what it's going to bring to any one specific region.
Well, we'll keep an eye on Jose, but obviously our thoughts and prayers to those folks in the southeast right now. Joe Rayo, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, sir.
And coming up next, we will, of course, remember the day's significance of 9/11. We'll look at how our area is commemorating that day and also whether the nation more divided now than it actually was when you go back to 2001. But first, we'll leave you with some images of Hurricane Irma.